one going to be?
Dark Side of the Moon is one of the best-selling albums of all time, and Pink Floyd are rock music legends. And so is their co-founder, bass player, singer, songwriter, and human rights champion, Roger Waters. After selling hundreds of millions of records, Waters left the group in 1985 because of growing disenchantment with the music industry and his band. 35 years on, and he's still selling out concerts around the world. With his dark, biting lyrics, Waters takes the listener on a rare musical journey. And offstage, he's been a loud voice when it comes to human rights issues. He has a particular interest in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and has publicly condemned other artists such as Madonna for performing in Israel. He's also involved in many other causes like malaria, poverty, and climate change. This week, we connect with the iconic British musician to talk about the current state of the world. Roger Waters talks to Al Jazeera. Roger Waters, co-founder of the legendary band Pink Floyd, welcome to Talk to Al Jazeera.
Thank you.
You're globally famous. You wrote most of the biggest successes of Pink Floyd. You're a rock star, and you are now very involved politically. Why? Why did you take that course?
I've always been very involved politically. I was born into a very political household. My mother was, and my father, before he was killed, were card-carrying members of the Communist Party. When I was a young teenager, maybe 13 or 14, one day my mother said to me, you know, Roger, you're going to come up against difficult decisions that you have to make later in your life. And when you do, it's extremely important, A, that you identify that those decisions are there to be made. And then you have to do research. You have to look at these questions from every different angle that you can, listen to all arguments, figure it out. And then you will have done the difficult work, the time-consuming work. After that, what happens next is easy. You simply do the right thing. That was the lesson that my mum, she's been dead for about 10 years now, but that's a lesson that I've never forgotten. And if you think about it, imagine if every parent in the world was able to say to their child what my mother said to me. You have to educate yourself, you have to take extreme care to try and find out what's happening before you make a decision about something. And then, having made that decision, you have to do the right thing. Her right thing was based upon her belief that all human beings deserve their freedom and their rights under the law. In fact, she believed in the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights by the United Nations in Paris. So she actually believes that the 30 articles of that declaration should be implemented under an accepted system of international law. If they were, almost all the problems that the human race had would disappear from the planet overnight. But of course, the oligarchs, the ruling class, do not believe in human rights. They believe in the rights of the wealthy and the powerful, and they couldn't give about anybody else's rights. This is quite clear. They pay lip service to it because it's politically convenient for them. But that you think Donald Trump or Mike Pence or Mike Pompeo or Joe Biden believe in human rights? Of course they don't. They have no interest in human rights, not even for their own citizens. They couldn't care. They couldn't give two figs for the citizens of the United States of America. Never mind citizens of any other country.
You've been quite vocal about your opinion about Donald Trump. You, among other things, you called him a mass destroyer of everything that any of us might love. What do you mean?
Well, Donald Trump has no interest, for instance, in knowledge. He has no interest in love. He has no interest in compassion. He has no interest in empathy. He has no interest in the future. He has no interest in the past. He has no interest in geography. He has no interest in ecology. He has no interest in the planet Earth. He has no interest in any of these things. All he has interest in is himself and his ego, and he's entirely content for his life to be one big reality TV show where he's at the middle of it so he can feel good about himself. He is a very, very small, mean-spirited, ignorant pig of a man. The world that I would like to envisage after COVID-19 is a world where we revere excellence and knowledge and wisdom.
Is Joe Biden a better choice?
Yeah, Joe Biden is no different. Joe Biden is a puppet. He's just he's the other glove puppet, you know. They're both puppets of the monster that lives beneath the surface, which is what I've been trying to describe, which has created the monster that is the United States of America. And you know, and the seeds have come from 300 or 400 years ago. It all comes from European colonialism. The British Empire was a disgusting monstrosity. We were appalling. We did exactly what the Americans are doing now, and we did it for several hundred years, along with the Portuguese and the Spanish and the Germans and the Dutch and the Belgians, and we went around the planet stealing, raping, destroying everything, just so that we, or a few of us, could be extremely wealthy. The Constitution in the United States was very carefully written by the Founding Fathers to make absolutely certain that power would never fall into the hands of the people by mistake. And certainly it's not going to with the current system if you have these two glove puppets, Trump and Biden, sniping at each other. It's called the Overton window. It's where you keep the conversation so tightly focused on, in this case, this election. But the election is completely irrelevant. The picture around it is the relevant picture, but they don't let the people look at that picture at all, because if they did start looking at it, they would start undermining the power base, and they would start removing power from the very, very wealthy. And you only have to be able to do simple arithmetic to see that what I say is true.
Okay, another issue that you seem quite involved in is the Palestinian one. You have been very vocal against Israel's occupation policy, and that backfired. People accused you of being anti-Semitic, and especially because you showed support for the boycott, disinvest and sanction movement, the BDS movement. But why did you get involved?
Because the Palestinian people asked me to, back in 2006. In 2005, Palestinian civil society started the BDS movement, and they asked people who were not Palestinian, they asked anybody in the rest of the world to join that movement in a fight to see if they could get basic human rights for themselves. Quite clearly, I'm not anti-Semitic. I've never done or spoken a single anti-Semitic word or act in my entire life, or had an anti-Semitic thought in my head in my entire life. The propaganda machine that the Israelis run is huge, and they spend millions and millions and millions of dollars every year trying to spread this lie that anybody who speaks against Israeli government policy is an anti-Semite.
Some have criticized you, saying that sometimes you have conflicting positions. Like on one side, you are defending the rights of the Palestinians, And then, on the other hand, it seems that you supported Russia's move in Crimea, and many Ukrainians would tell you, well, that's an occupied land as well at the moment. So how can you explain that?
I can explain it by simply that the narrative accepted in the West about the Russians' annexation of Crimea is complete bullshit. You only have to look at what actually happened in Crimea and where Crimea came from. Crimea was created after the Second World War, okay? It's always been a deeply divided country, with the South and the East being predominantly occupied by Russian-speaking people who adherents to all kinds of Russian traditions and philosophies and things. So when there was this illegal coup, the whole question of the Maidan protests and what happened is open to interpretation. And I'm sure there will be many histories written of it. Anyway, we know that Victoria Nuland and the CIA were complicit in setting up this Western paid for CIA and United States government orchestrated coup against the duly elected president and government of the Ukraine back in the day a few years ago, and the imposition of this new government. So the country became entirely fractured at that point. There are other narratives other than the accepted Western narrative, which was, oh, look, we're freeing the people of Ukraine from the Russian yoke and blah, blah, blah. However, the Russian government was put in a very difficult situation because suddenly now there was a government in Kiev that was extremely right-wing, controlled entirely by the Americans, and they were concerned about Sevastopol and about the deep water port on the Caspian or Black Sea or whatever that sea is called down there. So, and also there was a population in something that was still called the Crimea, because people remember the borders previously, who did not want this new government to the north of them. These are not the friends of the people of the Crimea. And so actually the people of the Crimea were polled, and 98% of them said, we don't want to be any part of this new illegal government of the Ukraine. We wish to join the Russian Federation. We want to be part of Russia, please. 98%. Not a shot was fired with the annexation of the Crimea, such as it's called. It's called the annexation by Russia. Now, the legal niceties of what were the contracts between Khrushchev and the Ukraine back in the 50s when blah, 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 blah. I'm not an expert in constitutional law, but I do know that 98% of the people who lived there said, no, we want nothing to do with these Nazis in the north. The people in the east, unfortunately, it wasn't quite so easy for them. I'm not sure why. Again, this is not where. But what I'm telling you is, you cannot talk about the 70-year-old Israeli occupation of Palestine and the relatively recent annexation or change of power in the Crimea in the same breath. They are entirely different things. One is that it's not as if the Palestinians in 1948 suddenly said, could you send down a load of Jewish people from northeastern Europe, please, to throw us out of our homes and 700,000 of us, and tell us that we have to get off the land because they are going to make a Jewish state here and they don't want us. That didn't happen. There was no poll with 98% of Palestinians suddenly saying, oh yeah, come in and throw us out. And the Russians aren't throwing out the people who live in the Crimea. They're supporting them.
I'm sorry to interrupt, because I just want to ask you about a few other issues and we're going to run out of time. So I wanted to go back to the UK a bit. You know, the Labour Party is under accusations of being anti-Semitic, allegations that Jeremy Corbyn is the man who took the Labour Party in that direction. Do you think that these are fair allegations? Is the Labour Party anti-Semite?
The conspiracy and it was a conspiracy theory, or the plan, to spread the anti-Semitic, story about people like me, and about the Labour Party in England abroad. It probably centred and came out of the Ministry of Strategic Affairs in Tel Aviv. This was completely orchestrated and very well done, and succeeded totally in destroying Jeremy Corbyn's chances of becoming the next Prime Minister of the UK. Chances that were very good, seemingly, a year before, 2 years before, whatever. And they absolutely used the anti-Semitic smear campaign to destroy Jeremy Corbyn's chances of winning that election. And they did it very, very successfully, and they succeeded in destroying it. Jeremy Corbyn, in my view, made terrible mistakes along the way. The biggest mistake that he and the Labour Party made was at the Labour Party conference in 2019, where they failed to totally dismiss the new IHRA, International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, definition of anti-Semitism, the rewriting by a NGO that nobody had heard of and that is completely irrelevant in terms of history or politics or anything else. They rewrote a definition of anti-Semitism to include any criticism of the policies of the government of the state of Israel. Wow. And the Labour Party did not say rubbish, throw it out the door. They endorsed it. And Jeremy Corbyn did not resign, and he should have done. He should on those grounds have resigned as leader of the Labour Party. Anybody with a heart or soul should have resigned at that point, because it is such patent nonsense. How can criticizing the Israeli policy of occupation and apartheid, which is what they're operating, how can you call that anti-Semitic? No, that would be like calling criticism of the South African administration before the end of the apartheid regime in South Africa anti-Christian. Or anti-Christian. Yeah, we could like calling it anti-Christian. Oh, you just hate white people. No, I don't. I hate the system that you're operating. But I'm not against the color of your skin or your religion or anything else, just as I have nothing against Jewish people. You know, I'm an atheist, so I can't subscribe to the mystification, if you want to call it that. I would call it that, of an attachment to any of the Abrahamic religions or any religion anywhere. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But I wouldn't dream of telling people that they can't believe whatever they want to believe. They believe the world's flat. A lot of people do in Texas, by the way. So the Labour Party, and also the Labour Party under the new leadership of Keir Starmer backed down from this ridiculous case in the High Court just a few weeks ago. And the documentary that John Ware had made about it a year earlier. And John Ware is now saying he may sue Jeremy Corbyn himself. These are rabid Zionists. And they're involved in a smokescreen, a huge smokescreen, to cover up the vile war crimes that have been perpetrated every single day against the people of Palestine by administration in Israel, in the state of Israel. And that has been going on for 70 years, also since 1948, it's remembered. So anybody of good conscience and good heart has to continue in the fight.
And do you think Labour can recover from this?
If Labour, yeah, maybe. Actually, this fight is taking place. It's really a fight between Rupert Murdoch and the truth. I know it's not just Rupert Murdoch, but the media are generally controlled now by very, very, very rich, very, very powerful people. It's no coincidence that Jeff Bezos, who's made his $160 billion, now owns the Washington Post on his own. One man owns that influential paper. All the papers are owned by, the Times of London is owned by Rupert Murdoch. News Corp owns, probably owns the Times of New York. I can't remember anymore who owns New York. But so this is a fight between, it's pure 1984. It's a fight between we the people, all the Winston Smiths out there, and the Ministry of Truth, who are telling you lies 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and who are pulling the wool over all of the eyes of all of the people, and will continue to do so until we stand up and say we need education and we need a healthcare system, and we need, because we are so weakened by your draconian neoliberal economic policies that it's hard for us even to rebel, which is why the Black-led Black Lives Movement matter, which is being acted out on the streets of American cities, is so important to us all. And we thank them for leading us in our struggle.
We're going to have to wrap up very soon, but I have two questions to ask you. And we're changing gears here somehow. Back in 1979, you wrote Mother. And you asked in that song, Mother, should I trust the government? Have you found the answer to that?
Yeah, of course. No. Unless, of course, I'm Norwegian or, or Danish or somewhere where there is a government that subscribes to some of the same beliefs I do, and believes that the government of any country or of any group or of any nation or of any should be there to serve the needs of the people, all the people, not just the very, very wealthy people, but all of the people.
And if you were to write a song about the current state of the world, what would you like it to say?
Well, I have written many. All I write about is that two strangers passing in the street, by chance two passing glances meet, and I am you and what I see is me. That we're all human beings. We're all either brothers and sisters or at least distant cousins. We're all African. We all owe an allegiance to one another, and we all have to stand united and refuse to be slaves to the few very rich who control our lives and who are destroying our planet. And I'm writing about this all the time.
And so what title would you give a song then? Currently, right now, if you had to do it about today.
Now, you're asking me to, to flip out a title, which would be flippant.
Well, Roger Waters, it was a pleasure. Thank you for talking to Al Jazeera.
Thank you. No, thank you for giving me this platform to say what I think, because I love to have a platform where I can say what I think, right or wrong, openly and honestly, and still, thank goodness, Al Jazeera is one of the places I can do that. I can do it on Al Jazeera, I can do it on RT. I can't do it anywhere in the United States because